Hi, my name is Peter Morfe. I'm a postdoc here at the Max Planck Institute in Leipzig. And it's my pleasure to be sitting here with Adriana Garroni, who's a mathematics professor at the University of Rome, La Sapienza. We're here to have an interview in anticipation of her Ladyzhenskaya Lecture today at the University of Leipzig. So I want to start out by saying Professor Garroni is an expert in the calculus of variations. If we could start the conversation just with you describing your research interests, broadly speaking.
Okay. Hi, nice to be here. What should I say? So calculus variation, so to say, is a part of the analysis and is mainly based in the idea that many phenomena in physics, in mechanics, or other applications are driven by some energy minimization criteria. And so calculus variation is this part of the analysis that develop the tools and the main, concepts that are needed to understand this minimization criteria and to prove existence of minimizer, to develop approximation results, derive new models from more fundamental models, things like that. This is, so to say, my general interest.
One thing I've noticed looking at your work is there's not just a mathematical element, but there seems to be a lot of influence coming from material science, sort of understanding the mathematics that describes polycrystals and things like that, dislocations. Could you say some things about the connection between your work or the inspiration that you draw from fields outside of mathematics like physics, materials? Sure.
I actually like very much the contact with applications. I mean, from the Italian standard, I am an applied mathematician. From the, say, US or generally maybe Anglo-Saxon culture, mathematical culture, I'm very pure. So I'm in between. Definitely, I'm pure in the sense that I prove theorems. I use kind of very abstract tools and things like that. But my my motivation is always focused on the application. So I think the application are very rich, problems. Or I mean, in particular for me, mechanics and physics is full of rich problems in which you can really find new ideas for mathematical theories. And in particular, yes, mechanics and materials. And this has been by chance, actually. And this chance is related with Max Planck, because at some point I moved for a few months in Leipzig in '98. So it was the very beginning of this institute. And I met Stefan Müller, who was a director here. And I started working with him and discussing with Michael Ortiz, who's an engineer, used to be in Caltech. And from this, I started to be very much interested in the application of calculus of variation to material sciences.
Interesting. I didn't know that the inspiration came from this institute.
Yeah, this institute, yes.
I think one thing that could be helpful for our audience is your origin story. How did you become interested in mathematics? So going back even further.
Well, this is always a bit difficult for me. I mean, there is a natural answer, is that which is my mother was a mathematician. So in a sense, it was something that was not completely unknown for me, even though my parents didn't really discuss with me their studies. And my father was a philosopher. So I was sort of in a good environment to consider this possibility. But then I think that at some point was even discouraging for me. I mean, because I want to be to differentiate from my mother, but I was good in mathematics, so it was sort of natural. So I decided the very last moment. So it was really like I was sort of undecided between science and art. And at the end, I decided for mathematics. I think it was a good choice. But I mean, I sort of realized that it was good for me while I was doing it.
I noticed, I got the impression that maybe you retained some of your interest in art because at some point you were teaching in architecture in Rome. Is that right?
Yeah, I did. Well, actually, this was not really my choice.
Okay.
So yeah, I got this position, so when I got the position at the professorship, the Italian system was sort of more rigid than now. So you were given to a certain school, and I was hired by this school of architecture. So I was teaching to architects for many years. I mean, I enjoyed it, but I mean, they were not the best student a mathematician can hope for.
So you were obliged to teach the architects?
Yeah, no, I liked it. I mean, I liked it, but somehow, so it's a very vague connection with art because so you teach very basic calculus, and the connection with art is sort of remote in a sense. You try to convince them that there is a connection with their studies and what you are teaching in calculus, but I mean.
Well, I hope you were able to draw some inspiration from the architects.
I think so.
So one thing, I wanted to give you the opportunity, since we're here today in honor of Olga Ladyzhenskaya, a historic female mathematician working in our area in analysis and PDEs, partial differential equations. And as you mentioned, your mother was also a mathematician. What does it mean to you to be able to be here to give a lecture with the memory of Ladyzhenskaya sort of in the background? Do you have any thoughts on the progress of women in mathematics, say, during your lifetime?
Okay, this is always a difficult question. So talking about Olga Ladyzhenskaya, well, I like particularly to be here and give this talk, also because I sort of met her when I was young, because she knew my mother. So my mother was in analysis too, and she used to work with some Russian mathematicians, and so I sort of met her a couple of times. So this is particularly important, so to say, for me. It's an honor to be here, of course. The answer about I don't know, the evolution of the position of we female mathematicians during my lifetime is a difficult answer. Of course, there are many more female mathematicians by now. Difficult to say something clever about this issue.
Sure.
But I think the problem of female in science in general, or maybe in culture or in social life, is a big, big question. And possibly, even though the situation is better now than when I was younger, I'm more conscious now than I used to be about this problem. So I think that it's really a matter of of role models. And I mean, for this, it's important to have some sort of occasions in which students or young people can see that there are females and achievements. At the same time, this role model is really a big problem. So there will pass many years before the situation will sort of be close to be balanced, because I don't know, I grew up, everybody who studies anything and who decides when he's young which are the models he wants to follow or she wants to follow, all the models are male. So, I mean, my favorite, at least it used to be, but now I'm looking more closely to the female culture, so to say. But I mean, my favorite writer is male, my favorite painter is a male, my favorite musician is a male. Okay.
Is that true, or just for example?
Well, I mean, it's probably true. I mean, Dostoevsky, Beethoven, or I don't know. I mean, politicians. I mean, all the history has been made by male. So, so I think that the usual feeling of a woman is that when is doing something, and in science this is particularly strong. I mean, they don't feel in the right place, in a sense. So it's more difficult to be confident.
Yeah, I think I can relate to what you're saying, especially getting older and appreciating the importance of role models, having people around that you can see that you relate to. I think that's I can certainly see how that could be a challenge for women in mathematics.
It's slowly going in the right direction, but very slowly. I mean, we have many years to cover.
Well, I have less history to look back on in mathematics, but let's see. So, you know, during the course of your career, I noticed that you've written many papers. You've also had opportunities, as you suggested, to work with people like Stefan Müller. I noticed Luigi Ambrosio, Gianni Dalmaso. When you look back at the mathematical results that you've had an opportunity to work on, theorems that you proved, is there a particular result? Could I ask you to identify one particular paper, say, that you worked on that you feel is representative, or maybe it's your favorite?
Okay, this is a difficult question. I think a couple of them. So there is a series of papers that I wrote with Stefan Müller and Sergio Conti. I mean, at some point Sergio Conti entered in the team, which are about phase field models for dislocations. So the Nabarro-Payas model for dislocations, and I think this was the starting point of my interest in material defects, which is a thing that at the end sort of identify my research interest. Then I did several things related with this issue, but I think this was the starting point, and I like particularly those results. And then I would say what I'm doing now. So this sort of upscaling to larger system where you have grain boundaries, or many effects at different scales that enters. And I mean, these new problems are also more geometric in a sense, so they have a connection with other quite interesting questions that are not necessarily related to material science.
Yeah, I think I noticed you had some slides that I found online from a recent summer school in Rome that discussed some of this work related to the Lukacs-Luteri, and there were some things about minimal partitions and things like this. So.
Yeah, I think this is more or less the subject of my talk today.
Yes. Yeah, I'm looking forward to learning more about this. So I think next I'd like to go into some questions that you could think of as being advice or thoughts on the practice of mathematics. I would imagine that our audience, many of them, whether they're young or old, would appreciate some tips about how to be a mathematician. For example, the first thought that I had is something that my mother told me, I guess getting back to women in mathematics, although she's not a mathematician. She told me recently, and some pointed advice, which was, you have to keep learning in life. If you stop learning, you get old quickly.
Yeah.
So So my question is about the practice of mathematics. What steps do you take to continue to grow as a mathematician, to keep learning, so that you're not the same mathematician tomorrow that you were yesterday?
So maybe I'm in a moment of my life in which I also look forward to something else, not only mathematics.
Yes, that's fair, of course.
Yeah, so the advice that I would maybe give, which now I apply to me, but can be also considered in a more general sense, is that, so maybe rephrasing your mother sentence, I think that the way to keep, to stay young and not becoming old quickly is to do always something new.
Okay.
So I think this is a way I sort of decided to approach my last part of my life, if you want to. Mm-hmm. So, and this applies to everything. I mean, try new things, try new ideas, try new directions, and so applies to life, but I think it applies also to mathematics. So not stay on the things you know and only on your comfort zone. So exactly. Like move forward to other things and look around to possible different directions, which is a general sentence in life and in mathematics, probably.
Of course. And of course, it's easier said than done. Okay, I think my next question sort of goes further into the direction of general advice. I know that you've had the opportunity to advise a number of PhD theses, and also for a while you were the director of the PhD program in mathematics at La Sapienza. So I'm eager to know, for the young mathematicians, early career people, what kind of general advice do you have about making your way as a mathematician, particularly if you're interested in continuing in mathematics as a researcher?
I am delivering lots of advices. Well, I mean, so when you decided to pursue a mathematical career, in a sense, you enter in a path which is difficult. I mean, it's challenging, it's very often frustrating, and so I think I had the experience of many good students that at some point didn't go on because of this. Because I mean, there are many moments in which you don't feel. So you don't feel comfortable, you don't feel at the right level, because it's full of very bright people, very good people, smart people, and so you are continuously challenged. So it's many times frustrating, but it's rewarding very much. So there are moments in which you solve a problem, you realize something, you understand something, and this is really rewarding. So my advice is to sort of stay strong and trust that there will be good moments. At the same time, I also know that people that do mathematics are very intelligent, very smart, and in principle they could have a very brilliant career somewhere else. And the academia is not always easy. So it depends on the countries, depends on the moments. This time, Italy is sort of stuck. There are not enough money in research, so careers are slow. But I mean, there is a freedom in this job that is very difficult to find anywhere else. So I suggest to stay strong.
Thanks. Grateful for the advice. The next question I wanted to ask, again, is about the practice of mathematics. Specifically, so at some point, I think when I started my PhD, someone told me the hardest part about mathematics is knowing which problems to work on. So I wanted to ask you, how do you think about going about finding problems to work on? Which problems do you pursue? Which ones do you save for sometime in the future? How do you approach this question of which problems are the right ones, either for you or your students?
I don't know. I think it's instinct. I mean, it's a matter of taste. So as I said at the beginning, I usually like problems that are sort of inspired by an application, by a question in modeling. And so there are so many problems in materials, in physics, or in other fields that are not clear. And choosing one of them and try to formalize them, try to reduce them to a problem that can be treated is a very fascinating process, and I would suggest to keep this point of view. So try to look for application in the sense that are, in the sense of theoretical applied math, in the sense that are the inspiration for structure that may give new insights. So it's a big generic, but this is what I can say.
So for someone who wants to pursue this sort of theoretical applied math or applicable mathematics, you would suggest that they really look into the physics literature or material science, learn about the science in order to get a sense of what might be interesting problems, or?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. I mean, for me it's been a very long and difficult process because the Italian school is very abstract, so it's not very much related with applications apart from keywords, but I mean the real connection is sort of missing. And so it took many years for me to be able to communicate with a different community, to understand talks from physicists or engineers and so on. But once you, start doing it, you realize that there are many interesting questions that have been addressed probably with a different language or a different approach many years ago, that if you translate them in mathematics, they are, really a source of very interesting mathematical questions.
Nice. So I guess I need to continue my own work in this direction. I agree that I had a similar trajectory in the sense that my background in mathematics, at least, is more abstract, and I think being here at the Max Planck, I've been pushed to become a bit more of an applied mathematician, which has been challenging, but also a good exercise. But it's nice to know that it's not just me who really needs some time to move in that direction. So the next question that I had is, you sort of mentioned how being an academic, particularly a mathematician, isn't necessarily a straightforward path. There are times, there are setbacks, there's sense of, can I make it? Will the job appear? Will the job materialize? So I wanted to know, the folks watching this video might get the sense that here you are, you were always destined to be this great mathematician, but were there setbacks? Were there times when you had challenges that you had to overcome? And do you care to share one of those with us?
Well, everybody had his bad moments in his life, or her life. But, I must say that my bad moments are not totally related with mathematics, so I don't have a good example to give.
Okay.
Of course, there are moments in which you feel more concentrated or active, moments in which things look slow and not going anywhere. But no, I didn't have a real crisis with mathematics.
there wasn't a time when you questioned whether you could continue, or?
No, I didn't. I never had this question, actually. I was lucky. I had, so as I said, I mean, the situation in Italy is a bit oscillating, and I was lucky to enter very quickly in the Italian system. Then it took many years for me to become full professor, because it was a time of sort of nothing was happening. But I always had a job, and so I never even considered to do something else.
Well.
Even though sometimes I think that I could have done something completely different. But like, I mean, I like very much doing things with my hands. And this is something that I miss in mathematics, so that you never see physically what you do.
Yes.
And so sometimes I think that maybe I could have done completely different things, like, I don't know, cook or painting.
That's
or
interesting.
Things like that.
Interesting, yeah. For me, I'm not such a hands-on person. I do some cooking, but I think ideas are really what motivate me. But it's interesting to hear that you miss the more tactile element of it. So, okay, I think I only have one question left for you, and this sort of brings it back to mathematics. And I wanted to ask you about the future. Say, thinking about the calculus of variations, are there particular open problems or questions, areas that you might like to see developed further, sort of things that you might like to see during your lifetime? What excites you about the future of the field when you think in the next few years, or perhaps the next few decades, developments that might be coming?
I was expecting the question. This question coming here. I was trying to see what should be my answer to this question, and actually I don't really have a good answer. So I don't know. I mean, physical systems are very complicated, very complex, and so my field tends to simplify some of the main issues of in these complex systems. I hope that at some point this approach, combined with possibly more statistical mechanics, would be able to describe complex systems at large scales, and sort of being really able to improve the phenomenological models at the continuum level. But I mean, this is a very vague answer, so I don't really. Yeah, I mean, what I really find very fascinating is this field of material defects in different situations, like liquid crystal superconductors or metals, and sort of physically is well known that there is a unified, so to say, framework. It would be nice to really have a very strong unified approach to this type of problems mathematically.
I see. So it sounds like you still want to push to have rigorous mathematical results for all of the physics that's...
Yeah, you may wonder why. I think this is an improvement for mathematics. I mean, sure. I'm not sure that a rigorous proof will add much to physics or applications, but it's an improvement for mathematics, I think.
Well, I think you're not alone. That people have always been fascinated by these kinds of questions, and people are still working on things like Boltzmann and all of these models. So, I mean, it's very ambitious. I think that's...
I mean, I'm not...
It's good to...
It's not my ambition. I was sort of suggesting that this is a direction in which I would like to see the research going, but... I'm not sure that I will do it, actually.
Okay, that's all of the questions that I had for you, Adriana.
Thank you.
Thanks, it's been a pleasure. I think this interview will be very helpful for mathematicians, particularly some of the young people who I'm sure look to someone like you and want to be able to have similar careers one day.
Thank you.